My name is Aisha, and I grew up in a small town.
Life in my town was quiet and simple. My father worked as a truck driver, gone for days on long highways, while my mother spent her hours working in a small store to help make ends meet. We didn't live in luxury, and sometimes we struggled, but we had dignity and pride. As a little girl, I didn't dream of riches or fame. My heart was set on something bigger, something that seemed almost unreachable for a small-town girl. I wanted to serve my country. I still remember the way my heart raced whenever I saw soldiers on television. The sound of marching boots, the sight of perfectly pressed uniforms, and the pride on their faces. It made me feel something I cannot fully explain. I used to sit close to the screen and whisper to myself, "One day, that will be me." And whenever I told my mother, she never discouraged me. She only placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "Emily, that path won't be easy, but if you are brave enough, nothing is impossible." I carried those words with me like a secret weapon. When I turned 19, I finally had the courage to chase my dream. The day I signed up for the United States Army, my whole body was trembling. I remember standing in line with other hopeful recruits, my palms sweating, my mind racing with both fear and excitement. When the officer handed me my acceptance letter, it felt as though the sky had opened. I could hardly breathe. That night, I called my mother with tears in my eyes and said, "Mom, I made it." She cried softly on the phone and whispered back, "I'm proud of you, Emily." That was the first time I felt the weight of my decision, but also the joy of knowing I was about to live my dream. Training was everything I expected and more. It was exhausting, painful, and mentally draining. The scorching sun beat down on us during long runs. Our backs ached from heavy packs. Our muscles screamed after endless drills. There were nights I lay on my bunk so tired I could hardly move. Some recruits quit. Some broke down in tears. But every time I felt close to quitting, I reminded myself why I was there. I didn't come to give up. I came to fight for something bigger than myself. Slowly, I grew stronger. My legs became faster, my body tougher, and my mind sharper. I began to feel like a real soldier. I believed that the army was built on honor and unity. I believed that once I put on the uniform, I would be seen as equal to every other soldier beside me. But soon I began to notice cracks in that belief. At first, it was small looks that lingered too long, jokes that seemed harmless on the surface but carried hidden meaning. Some male officers treated us differently, not as fellow soldiers, but as something else. One officer once said to me with a smirk, "Emily, you don't need to run so hard. Your real duty isn't on the battlefield." I laughed nervously, pretending not to understand. But his words echoed inside me. What did he mean? It didn't take long for me to see the truth. Some female soldiers were quietly pushed away from important tasks. They weren't given the same training opportunities as the men. Instead, they were invited to private dinners, asked to spend time with officers, or pressured into roles that had nothing to do with defending the country. At first, I wanted to believe it wasn't true, that maybe I misunderstood. But when I saw it happen repeatedly, I couldn't deny it anymore. Some women felt trapped and went along because they feared punishment. Others stayed silent because they thought no one would listen. The realization broke my heart. I had dreamed of the army all my life. I thought it was the purest place of honor. And now, here I was, faced with an ugly reality. At night, when I lay on my bed in the barracks, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself, why did I join? Was it to serve my country, or to be treated as less than a soldier? Was it to protect people, or to protect the pride of officers? Those thoughts kept me awake many nights. Not everyone was the same.
I want to be honest about that. There were officers who treated us with fairness, who inspired us with their leadership and respect. They believed in equality, and they made us feel proud to serve. But their voices were often drowned out by others who abused their power. The shadow of unfairness followed us everywhere, and it weighed heavily on our hearts. One of my closest friends in training, Sarah, broke down one evening. She came to me in tears and whispered, "Emily, I can't take it anymore. They don't see me as a soldier. They only see me as entertainment." Her words pierced me. I held her hand tightly and said, "Sarah, you are stronger than you think. We didn't come here for this. We came to serve." But even as I said those words, I knew how heavy her pain was. I shared it too. I saw it in the faces of other young women, brave, intelligent, capable, but denied the chance to prove themselves fully. That night, as I lay in bed, I remembered my mother's voice again. "If you are brave enough, nothing is impossible." And I knew then that silence was no longer an option. If I kept quiet, nothing would change. If I stayed afraid, the wrong would continue. I had to speak, but for Sarah, and for every girl who wore the uniform with dreams in her heart. I started keeping a record in my journal. Every incident I saw, every unfair word, every misuse of authority. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to continue. Finally, with a pounding heart, I wrote a letter to higher authorities. In it, I explained what was happening, how women were treated unfairly, and how many of us were denied the respect we deserved as soldiers. The days after I sent that letter were some of the longest of my life. Fear followed me everywhere. I wondered, would they punish me? Would they ignore me? Would they remove me from the army? I prepared myself for the worst, but something unexpected happened. A few weeks later, an investigation team arrived at our base. They began asking questions, interviewing soldiers, and reviewing complaints. At first, most women were too afraid to speak, but slowly, when they realized someone had already taken the first step, they found their voices. Stories poured out. Silent pain turned into spoken truth. One evening, Sarah hugged me with tears in her eyes and said, "Emily, because of you, I finally feel brave." That moment made every risk worth it. I didn't feel like a hero. I was just a girl who refused to stay silent. But sometimes, one voice is enough to start an echo. The investigation didn't fix everything overnight. Change never comes that fast, but it planted a seed. Some officers were warned, some were questioned, and new rules were introduced to protect women and promote equality. Programs were started to ensure respect was given where it was due. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. For me, the greatest victory wasn't the official changes, but the awareness. People began to talk about it openly. Respect and dignity became part of the conversation alongside courage and discipline. Slowly, the idea spread that the army isn't just about weapons. Battles and war it is about values, about honor, about people. Today, when I look back at my journey, I still wear my uniform with pride, but my pride is deeper now. It comes not only from serving my country, but also from standing up for what is right. The Army taught me many lessons, but the most important one was this: silence protects the wrong, but courage creates change. That is why I share my story. Because women do not join the Army to be overlooked. They do not join to be treated as decoration. They join with the same dream as meant to serve, to protect, to sacrifice. A nation can only be strong when all its soldiers stand side by side as equals. If you are listening to my story today, I want you to remember this. Respect women, whether in uniform or out of it. Give them the dignity they deserve, because the strength of a country depends not only on its weapons, but on its values. And equality is the greatest strength of all. My name is Aisha. I am a soldier, a daughter, a dreamer, and a fighter for truth. I joined the Army to serve my country. I faced struggles. I discovered harsh realities, but I never gave up. I raised my voice, even when it shook. And I learned that courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to speak despite it. And if my story leaves you with one lesson, let it be this: never stay silent in the face of injustice. Speak up, even when your voice trembles, because silence allows wrong to survive, but courage has the power to change the world.